G'day crew, Ross here out in the garden. Now it is a beautiful autumn day. We're about 3 weeks into autumn, and today we're going to do what I consider one of the most important jobs at the start of autumn, and that is refresh my garden beds. So I'm here in front of one of my 2 compost beds, and just over there is my 3rd. That's not a compost bed, that's full of soil. This is full of compost. And I've just finished the summer crop in this bed, and behind me I've got a bit of cleaning up to do. So let's get into it and see how I can refresh these beds ready for our winter's planting. Now previously I've done a video on setting these up, and this is a purely compost based garden bed. So it's 800 high, about 2.5 feet, and it's layers of coconut, horse manure, cardboard, grass clippings, food scraps. And that means that it's going to compact, and this had compacted down by about this much, and about a week and a half ago I filled it up just with my own compost. What we're going to do now, and that compost has got some activated charcoal in it. So we can see here, I'll get a bit closer to the camera. You can see a bit of charcoal there. And that's activated, which means it's been sitting in the compost. And you can hear that. The structural integrity of that charcoal is still intact. And what that means is it provides a home for all your beneficial bacteria. And the fact that it's been sitting in compost means it's fully activated. So it's got bacteria in it. If you put in unactivated charcoal into your garden bed, it's actually going to set your garden bed back a little bit, because bacteria are going to migrate into the charcoal from your garden bed, so you don't want that. Now, I've got the levels I need. So just a couple of things I'm going to do. Now the first one, so I'm going to give it just a little bit of rapid razor, just some pelletized fertiliser. All right, and I'm going to dig that in just roughly. I want it sort of sitting around or just under the surface. All right. I don't need too much of it. We'll be fertilising a little bit later on. Brand new plants do not need a whole heap of fertiliser to start off with, because sometimes we can kill them with kindness. Okay. Second thing I'm going to do is, even though this is full of compost that I've made, my absolute go-to, my favourite, is some cow manure. This is composted down. I'm going to put, that's probably about half a bag. Spread that around. I'm just going to roughly dig this in just to the top surface. I'm only scratching that around in the top couple of inches, or 5 or 10 centimetres, so that I've got some of that existing compost that I've made from my hot composting bays, and I've got that really nice stuff, that manure, which I really like using for vegetables. It does give them a nice head start. And you see I've still got some straw mixed in with my compost. That's fine, that'll continue to rot down. There you go. My hides come up to just under the lip there. And again, said this will sink. A compost bed will continue to sink for a number of years. But what'll happen, it'll get richer and richer and richer, because you're going to keep adding compost and biochar into it. And in fact, I've got these big plastic tubes here, 150 mil, full of holes. And what I can do is put in, as I rip off bits of plants, old dead leaves, I just put them straight in there, and they actually compost down into the soil and spreads the goodness throughout. Now the next thing I'm going to do, here we go, a bit of water here. I'll finish topping it up in a minute. I'm going to put 3 things in here. And the first I'm going to put in is trace elements. And trace elements are all the little things that your plants don't need a lot of, but really do make a lot of difference. You can see I've scientifically measured that. And I'll give you an idea. We've got sulfur, calcium, magnesium, manganese, iron, copper, zinc, boron, and molybdenum. Now, it doesn't need that in high amounts, it just needs it in small amounts. Second thing I'll do is I'll put in some Powerfeed, and I'm only looking at putting in a weak solution. Normally put about 10 mils for plants. That's it. I'm only putting a very small amount in there. And I'm also putting in sea salt. Now this is not a fertiliser. This is a seaweed extract, and it adds beneficial bacteria and a little bit of trace elements in. So by itself, if you're putting this in expecting great results with your plants without putting in a fertiliser, it's not going to do very much, but it's a little tonic. I'm just going to go and top the water up in that. Alrighty, and now we're going to give that a good water in. Now you think that's a bit counterproductive, Ross. Maybe you should plant and then water. But what I want is I want those trace elements and that sea salt to be in the soil as I plant. And I'm going to get the basil up here on your left as well. And I'm going to give it a really good soak. All right. So those trace elements are quite important, and they're missing in most of your fertiliser. Most of your fertiliser is NPK, so nitrogen, potassium and phosphorus. Now that rapid raiser I put in is a little bit lower in nitrogen than most of your fertilisers, and I'm happy with that because at the start of the season we don't want a whole lot of necessarily plant growth, we just need good stability. So potassium and phosphorus and nitrogen at a slightly lower level. Later on you really want to encourage lots of green growth. Then you want to amp up to a little bit better fertiliser with more nitrogen into it. That's a bed that's pretty much only needed a little bit of extra help. So I've just put in a little bit of fertiliser, I've put in a little bit of biochar, and I've put in a little bit of cow manure compost. Beautiful, ready to go. Now let's take a look at this bed next door. It looks messy. And let's look at what I've got here. So I've just got a bunch of really hit and miss, very small, tiny little carrots. And what I think the problem here is that carrots don't necessarily like too much fertiliser. In fact, they like fertiliser from last year. And what I've done is I've really hit this bed hard this year. So I think I've actually worked against myself. And they don't like things like stones. There's a few little stones in here, I do know that from the compost. Look at this one, it's actually worked its way backwards. It's hit something and then turned around. So I'm just going to put those aside. I'm going to pull all the carrots out. A couple of them might make nice little carrots for a salad. I've also got a nice big basil here. And what I'm going to do with that, so I'm just going to get my hands under it. And I'm going to lift it out, root stock and all. And I'm going to transplant that into this garden bed right next door. And I'm reasonably sure it will take off because I haven't really disturbed the roots, and I've put it from one compost bed straight into another one. This one does have a little bit more in the way of fertiliser. I think that will do just fine, and I'll give that a little bit of a water in a bit later. So there you go. Right, so we've emptied that side and we've lost about probably 6 inches. That's how much the grow bed has dropped. I haven't filled this one up at all, so 6 inches we've got to top it up, which is what we're going to do. And on the other side here, and I've got to work around a pumpkin vine that's still producing, I've got what's left of 4 zucchinis. I've got 3 left. And they're pretty much at the point where, you know, there's nothing left. There's 2 little zucchini here. I doubt they're going to grow up because ants are getting them and the frost is going to get them. So I'm just going to fold that straight down into that little compost area. I'm going to do the same with this one. Beautiful. Now I know what I'm dealing with and approximately how much I have to put back in. I'm going to go get a wheelbarrow and I'm going to dump a whole lot of my own compost in here to bring the bulk up. And that's what we'll do. The great thing about this is there's lots and lots and lots of activated biochar. Let's take my glove off so you can get a better view of this biochar. Some of it's probably a little bit big. So here we go. Listen to this. It's got a really good cellular structure. If you just take charcoal out of a fire, it's been burnt. Most of the cellular structure is gone, and when you go like that, you'll crush it. It'll just be dust. Whereas biochar, you can crush it, or try to, and it'll still end up in lots of little chunks. And this has lots of biochar in it. And because it's been in there for probably 7 or 8 months now, as the compost has matured, and there's lots of bacteria building up in the compost, those bacteria have migrated into the biochar. which means what I'm basically doing is putting in a whole lot of beneficial bacteria into this garden bed because they're living in the biochar. The other thing about the biochar is it absorbs about 5 to 6 times its own weight in water, so it acts like a natural water crystal. Now what I'm going to do on this bed is, first of all, my pelletized fertiliser. Now I'm putting that below the surface, and I'm not putting a huge amount on. I don't need a huge amount of this stuff. There we go. That's plenty. What I do have is a chunky garden bed. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to fill this up with cow manure and sheep manure. It'll still be chunky because I'm going to incorporate it, but it should be pretty good. And that is a nice fine growing media. And this sheep manure, which I have not used before, it's a little bit more expensive than the cow, but given it's 100% animal product and there's no other organics put in there, I think it may be a better quality. That bed is ready to go. Now I haven't put any liquid fertiliser in this one. My thoughts are that there's enough manure compost in there to give the plants a good head start, and what I'll do is I'll come past when the seedlings come up and I'll give it a liquid fertiliser then, but I'm not going to do anything until then. So you don't always have to give it too much. Depends on what you're planting, depends on the situation. I'm just going to leave it like that. Okay, so we can see the 2 beds at the back there, and they're now ready to plant out, which is what I'll do. And this is my big bed. This is 3 metres long by 800 by 800. So about 2.5 cubic metres of material in there. It was mostly clay. What I did, I put the clay back in, but about every 20 centimetres, I put a big layer of coconut coir. And now I've got still over a pallet of that stuff, which I picked up for nothing. I did a video on that, so you might want to go and take a look. Just trying to get my tripod lined up here. Sorry about the movement. Okay, there you go. So look, I'm not going to do a lot with this one. What I did, I've only brought this over here 2 days ago, and I filled it up, and I used the same topping that I had in the old bed. And in the old bed I have just been putting a really good quality compost on top each year. So this has had mostly cow manure and my own fine compost, and it's really rich, black and lovely. But no matter what, I always put some cow manure on, or in this case I'm going to use the sheep manure, and it's composted even better than what I have. So I'm just going to spread that around on top. I'm not going to put a lot on because I haven't got much left, and I don't need too much. This is already a really nice garden bed. It'll get another full bag, or maybe even 2 bags at the end of winter. And I'll just incorporate this a little bit just into that top bit. Just get my fingers in there and give it a good shovel. And you can do this, as I said, this is mostly soil, this garden bed. This is something I absolutely recommend you do, is just get a couple of bags of that composted material, and you're going to find your bed will thank you. Now when I was filling this up, about 10 centimetres or 15 centimetres below the surface, it's about half a foot, I'd put a layer of the pelletized manure. I didn't put it near the surface. Once the seedlings go down a little bit, I'll pick up on that. But to start with, there's enough goodness in this manure, and that'll get them going. Now what I'll also do here is I will make up again a mix of the trace elements, and I'm going to put in a little bit of sea salt and just a little bit of Powerfeed. Not much, just a small amount. Mostly I want trace elements in here. So let's do that, and then we're pretty much ready to plant out. So when I'm doing this, I fill it, my container, mostly with water. I'm putting a bit of sea salt in, very black and smelly. Put that down there. We'll put in, again, just a small amount of Powerfeed. We don't need much. There we go, that's plenty. On full grown trees you get up to 90 mils in a bucket, but on vegetables it's about 10 mils, and that's probably 6 or 7 mils. Now the reason I do that is because this stuff froths up when you fill it with water. So if you put it in then you add water, you get this much froth in the top. There we are, that's your trace elements. So if I fill it up there and then I go and just put the last little bit in, putting the last little bit of water will mix all that through for me. Okay, so you can see there, you see that froth, but you can also see it's pretty much mixed through. So this is going to give me the Powerfeed, a little bit of it. I don't need much. There's plenty of goodness in that soil already. What came out of the bed was already good. The compost manure is really good. I've also got some sea salt, which as I said is just a tonic. And I've got those trace elements which are missing in all of your fertilisers, or most of your fertilisers. Some of them have a little bit of trace element, most of them just have your NPK. So they have the 3 big ones, they don't have all of the rest. Okay, and trace elements is something that I put on all my fruit trees several times per year. You put it on your citrus and they will thank you. That's ready to go. So it's not a lot of work. Now whether you're using soil or whether you're using compost like I am, the process is going to be the same. You're going to mix it up, the top layer, add in some compost, put in some slow release fertiliser a little bit below the surface to give the plant something to work down towards. Bio-char if you've got it, it's good stuff. If you don't, that's okay. So if it's autumn where you are, this is my #1 job, is to clean out your summer crop, transplant anything you still want to keep growing, put it in a pot, put it in another bed, and give everything a dig through, whether you've got a compost bed, whether you've got a soil bed, dig it through, put some compost in, dig that through, put in a little bit of slow release fertiliser, and then give it some trace elements. That's probably my biggest tips. The Powerfeed and the sea salt, great, but when they're first starting, sometimes that's a bit of overkill for seedlings. I don't necessarily need it. That can come in a couple of weeks. I've done it all at once, but you don't have to. Anyway, get stuck into it. Thanks for your time as always, and until next time, happy gardening. See ya.